My mom said if I wasn't perfect, I wasn't worth loving. So when my sister almost died trying to live up to her standards, I made a choice. I wouldn't save our mother's image. I'd save my sister instead. My name is Cameron Adler. I'm 23 years old, and I used to think my family loved me. Not in the vague, sappy, oh, they're just bad at expressing it kind of way. I mean real love. The kind that wraps you up when you're sobbing, listens when you're lost, and stands behind you when you fail. Turns out, I was wrong. Growing up in the Adler household meant two things: winning and not embarrassing the name. My parents didn't raise kids. They raised products, refined, polished, resume-ready. My older sister, Madison, was the test run. Debate team, track captain, Stanford. She's a corporate lawyer now, wears her disappointment in me like it's stitched into her skin. My little brother, Noah, had promised too, piano prodigy, mathlete, quiet enough not to rattle the glass walls of our image. And me? I was the golden boy, class president, full ride to Yale, science fair prodigy. My mom had a binder, an actual 3-ring binder, labeled Cameron's brag sheet, which she handed out at parties like some delusional press agent. And I bought into it. All of it. I was 17 when I passed out in AP chemistry from sleep deprivation and caffeine overload. The teacher called an ambulance. When I came to, lying under sterile hospital lights with wires hooked to my chest, my dad's first words weren't, "Are you okay?" They were, "This better not end up in the paper." I should have known then. But I kept pushing, because perfection was the price of admission to their love. If I kept earning it, maybe one day it would feel real. It never did. When I started therapy at 21, quietly, without telling them, it was like breaking an unspoken rule. Vulnerability wasn't a virtue in our family. It was weakness. My mother found the prescription bottle for Lexapro in my backpack and confronted me in the kitchen, whisper screaming like it was heroin. "Don't you dare bring that kind of attention on us," she hissed. "You want people thinking there's something wrong with you?" "I'm trying not to fall apart," I told her. "You don't get to fall apart," she said. "Not after all we've done for you." I started writing poetry in secret after that. Journals filled with words I didn't have the courage to speak aloud. Pages and pages about drowning quietly, while everyone else applauded how well I swam. And then, Noah broke. Not me. Not the therapy kid. Not the burnout. It was Noah who cracked first. He was 16. I found him curled up in the corner of our garage, trembling. There was an empty bottle of sleeping pills in his hand and a note in his pocket that read, "I'm sorry for being a disappointment." My world didn't just stop. It imploded. He lived. Barely. But something in me died that day. I stayed at the hospital for 3 days straight, lying to our parents, covering for them, whispering to doctors that yes, we had family support. Yes, we had aftercare. Yes, he'd be safe. When my mom finally showed up, 2 days late, she walked into the room with a neutral expression and said, "We'll tell people it was dehydration." Dehydration. My brother had tried to end his life, and all she cared about was what people would say. I didn't say a word. I just stood up and walked out, straight to the payphone in the hallway, and I called the only person I could still trust. "Grandma," I said, voice cracking, "can I come stay with you for a while?" She didn't ask questions, just said yes. That night, I packed a duffel bag with the essentials, my meds, my journals, my laptop. I left a note on Noah's pillow. Not poetic, just the truth. "I love you more than they know how to. Don't give up on yourself, I won't." And I walked out of the house that built me and nearly broke me. My grandmother lived in an old wooden house on the edge of Boone, North Carolina. There were no buzzing landlines there, no SAT prep schedules taped to the fridge. Just the sound of wind brushing through windows and a woman near 80 who knew how to listen without interrupting. "Have you eaten?" was the first thing she asked me when I stepped through the door. Not, "What did you accomplish today?" Not, "Did you upset your mother again?" Just, "Have you eaten?" I'd never been one to cry easily, but I cried then, like a 6-year-old lost at a crowded fair. She pulled me into her frail, warm arms, and I didn't feel weak. I felt understood. In the days that followed, I slept more than I ever had. Something in me, some invisible fracture, was trying to heal, slowly and quietly, like a tree finding its shape again after a storm. I called Noah every night. He was still in the hospital's recovery program, with real doctors, structured meals, and most importantly, no mother. Every time I said his name, he cried. It was the first time I'd seen Noah cry without shame. Not because of a bad grade or missed scholarship, but just because he missed me. We got played, didn't we, Cam? He whispered once, voice hollow. Love only came when we were perfect. I didn't know how to answer that, because it was true. And truth hurts like a blade drawn clean through childhood. During that time, my mother launched a campaign. Let's call it what it was, damage control. She called friends, teachers, relatives. Cameron's going through a rebellious phase. Noah's fragile, sensitive, needs tough love. They've been influenced by outsiders. Never once did she admit that she was part of what nearly killed her son. My father? Silent. As always. Madison, our golden child sister, texted me a single line. You're humiliating the family. Come home. I read it. Deleted it. Didn't reply. Instead, I began writing my own kind of survival ledger. Fragments of memories that didn't seem huge on their own. Kneeling on dry rice for 2 hours over an 89. Noah losing internet, phone, and dinner privileges because he talked back. Madison crying after a rejection, only to hear our mother say, good. You needed to fail for once. Tiny pieces. But together, they told the truth. Love in our home always had terms and conditions. One night, my grandmother said something I'll never forget. You are not your grades. Not your resume. You're a person, and you deserve to be loved just for that. I had never heard those words in my 18 years of life. Hearing them for the first time made me tremble. I started therapy at a small clinic nearby, not because I was sick, but because I needed to understand just how warped my reflection had become under the mirror of perfection. I told the therapist about the achievement binders, about being forced to give a speech at my aunt's wedding with no cue cards, because you have to be excellent in front of a crowd, about how I didn't even know what I actually liked, because every decision I made was about pleasing someone else. She listened quietly, then asked, if no one expected anything from you, who would you be? I didn't know, but for the first time in my life, I wanted to find out. Then one day, Noah called. I want to come live with you, he said. They're releasing me soon, and I can't go back there. I looked around my grandmother's creaky little house. There was a spare bedroom, a kitchen with mismatched mugs, a kind of quiet that wrapped around you like a blanket, not a cage. I said, come home, Noah. This is home now. Noah arrived with one suitcase and eyes that didn't trust happiness yet. He was thinner, paler, but there was something different too, something more honest in the way he carried his silence. Like he wasn't trying to be anything anymore. Not brilliant, not brave, just here. When I hugged him at the door, I didn't say, you look good, or how are you feeling? I said, I'm glad you're alive. He broke into tears. That night, we sat cross-legged on the porch, the air thick with fireflies and quiet. Noah stared up at the stars like they held answers. You think she'll ever stop? He asked me. I didn't need to ask who he meant. No, I said. But we will. Living together again wasn't like the movies. There were no cute montages of siblings laughing over pancakes or pillow fights. There were panic attacks, nightmares, long silences where grief didn't know how to speak. Sometimes Noah would flinch when I raised my voice. Not in anger, just reacting to a spilled drink or a bad day. Sometimes I would still fold my laundry with military precision, like I was waiting for someone to inspect it. Trauma doesn't vanish. It mutates. But every morning, we tried again. I got a job at a local bookstore. It wasn't glamorous, but it felt right. Books didn't expect you to be perfect. They just asked you to turn the page. Noah enrolled in online classes part-time. Creative writing. Psychology. For the first time, he wasn't trying to be top of his class. He was just trying to enjoy learning again. He wrote short stories late into the night, some dark, some whimsical, some about a boy who grew up in a house where love meant punishment and silence meant safety. He never said they were about us. He didn't have to. And then came the letter. It arrived in a cream envelope with elegant handwriting. I knew it before I opened it. Our mother. Inside was a single page. Cameron, I hope you've come to your senses. You and Noah are embarrassing yourselves. I raised you better than this. You are both wasting your potential and humiliating this family. I forgive you, though. You're still welcome to come home, if you apologize. No warmth. No remorse. Just control wrapped in civility. I didn't show it to Noah. Instead, I burned it in the sink while the kettle boiled. Some things aren't meant to be replied to. But it wasn't just her. Word spread. An uncle texted me. Don't you think you're being dramatic? An aunt messaged Noah. Your mother is worried sick. Just call her. I blocked them all, not because I hated them, but because survival required it. Some people see abuse and call it discipline. Some see silence and call it respect. Some see scars and ask what you did to deserve them. We learned that boundaries aren't rude. They're necessary. That fall, Noah and I made a pact. We wouldn't hide anymore. We wouldn't pretend the past hadn't shaped us. But we wouldn't let it define us either. I started writing again, really writing. Not for a grade. Not for applause. Just truth. Noah started therapy on his own, without me booking it for him. We were learning how to be siblings, not soldiers. The last line of a story Noah wrote that month has never left me. Sometimes, survival doesn't look like standing tall. It looks like sitting beside someone in the dark, whispering, "Me too." And maybe that's what we were now. Not healed, not whole, but together. By November, the whispers became war drums. Our mother wasn't satisfied with silence. She needed an audience. She posted on Facebook a long, manicured paragraph about her estranged children, filled with just enough ambiguity to sound saintly to outsiders but poison to us. She mentioned mental instability, outside influence, and the tragedy of ungratefulness. Accompanied, of course, by old photos, me at my high school graduation, Noah at age 10 with a soccer medal, her standing behind us, smiling like motherhood had always been a crown and never a leash. I stared at it for a long time before I showed Noah. "She's rewriting it all," he said quietly. "She's turning our pain into her PR." I nodded. And people are clapping. The comments were worse than the post. "You're such a strong woman. Teenagers today don't understand sacrifice. They'll come around. You raised them right." And the worst one of all, "Sometimes kids need tough love." I wanted to scream, to reply, to unload every sleepless night, every panic attack, every time we were told our tears were a sign of weakness. But I didn't. Because the moment you justify your wounds to people who worship the person who gave them to you, you've already lost. Then came the text from Grandma. We hadn't heard from her in almost a year. "I saw your mother's post. This has gone too far, Cameron. Please come home for Thanksgiving. It would mean so much to everyone. Don't ruin the family over some misunderstanding." Some misunderstanding. Like we'd spilled milk on the carpet. Not survived years of silent dinners, slammed doors, and a mother who called you dramatic when you cried over broken bones and broken trust. I didn't reply. Noah deleted the message without reading his. Instead, we made our own plan. A quiet Thanksgiving. Just us. I made garlic mashed potatoes. Noah burned the turkey. We laughed for 10 minutes straight and ordered Chinese food instead. Later that night, we sat under a blanket on the porch, watching the stars flicker above the quiet town. "I'm not going back," he said. "Me neither." And just like that, something settled. Something true. We weren't running anymore. We were reclaiming. But the peace was short-lived. The next week, I got a call from the university's Dean of Student Affairs. "Cameron, we've received a formal concern from a family member stating you may be in psychological distress. They claim your brother is unstable and you've both cut off necessary support systems. Under policy, we're required to conduct a wellness check." My hands went cold. I didn't need to ask who reported us. "She's trying to get us institutionalized," I muttered after hanging up. Noah just stared at the floor. "Do you think she believes any of this? Or is it just a game to her?" I didn't know what was worse, that she might know the truth and not care, or that she'd constructed a fantasy so fragile, any crack meant trying to destroy us. We met with the university counselor and provided documentation. My therapist vouched for me. Noah's new counselor did the same. They closed the report quietly. But the damage was there, in how I flinched at unknown phone numbers, how Noah jumped at knocks on the door. Fear that your mother might not stop until the world believed she was the victim. That December, we got our first Christmas card. Not from her. From a girl who read my blog about surviving parental gaslighting. She wrote, "I thought I was crazy until I read your words. My mom tells me I'm too sensitive, too dramatic, that I make things up. But I see myself in your story. Thank you for making me feel less alone." Noah held the letter to his chest. We didn't speak for a long time after that. When we finally did, it was Noah who whispered what we both knew. Maybe surviving wasn't the end of our story. Maybe telling it is. We didn't post the full story. Not at first. Just fragments. Quotes. Memories. Things said behind closed doors. "No child of mine will grow up weak. Crying is manipulation. You owe me for everything." I shared them anonymously on my blog. Noah posted them as poetry, veiled in metaphor, tucked into digital corners of the internet. But people recognized them anyway. The messages started small. I thought I was the only one. This sounds like my dad. Thank you. I didn't have the words, but now I do. And then it grew. Hundreds of emails. Stories from strangers. Survivors. People who had tried and failed to put language to the invisible bruises of emotional control. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like a revolution. Until she found it. Until my mother found the blog. We knew because she left a comment under an alias, poorly disguised, the way someone does when they want you to know it's them. You think painting yourself as a victim makes you noble? I raised you. I fed you. I worked 2 jobs so you could go to that fancy college and mock me on the internet. Noah read it out loud and didn't blink once. I stared at the words. She didn't deny a single thing, only reframed it as sacrifice. Pain, to her, was parenting. We didn't delete the comment. We let it stay, for others to see, for others to recognize. She tried again. Messages, emails, a voicemail that played through my speaker one afternoon like a bad horror movie. You ungrateful little wretch. You think anyone else will love you the way I did? You'll regret this when the world chews you up and spits you out. I'm your mother. You don't get to erase me. Noah pressed pause. Silence filled the room. Then he said, she's wrong. And I believed him. January brought snow, and the first cease and desist letter. A lawyer claiming defamation, saying our posts were libelous, emotionally distressing, a mischaracterization of maternal discipline. We laughed. We sent back a reply, a scanned copy of hospital records, therapist reports, photos of the Rice kneeling, transcripts of old voicemails, printouts of every story we'd collected from others who had met her, or women just like her. The lawyer didn't respond again, but the message was clear. If she couldn't control us directly, she'd do it through fear. By February, a local news outlet picked up the blog, a segment about digital healing in the age of estrangement. They didn't use our real names, but the story resonated. More inboxes, more survivors, more daughters who'd been called liars for telling the truth. One message hit me harder than the rest. I read what you wrote and told my husband for the first time what my mother did. He cried, not because he didn't believe me, but because he finally understood why I flinch when someone raises their voice. We weren't changing the world, but we were changing someone's. My mother escalated. She filed a police report, claimed we were endangering her health, said the blog caused emotional trauma, that Noah had stolen medication, that I had hacked her social media. The officer who called me sounded exhausted. Ma'am, I've read the blog. I'm not saying this as a cop. I'm saying this as someone who has kids. You don't have anything to worry about. Still, I shook for hours afterward. Because when you've been raised to fear your own mother's voice, even lies feel dangerous. That night, Noah found me crying in the hallway. He didn't speak. He just sat beside me and opened a small notebook. Handwritten in neat print were names. Dozens. Maybe more. People who wrote in. People who saw us. He pointed to one entry. You saved me from going back. I think. We were never meant to make her understand, he said. We were meant to make someone else survive. And for the first time in months, I let myself cry without shame. Because pain shared doesn't shrink. But it stretches until it becomes a bridge. It's been 3 years since I gave up trying to make my mother love me the way I needed. 3 years since I chose peace over performance. Since then, she's tried everything. Lawsuits, public shaming, crying on the internet about being abandoned by ungrateful daughters. But I haven't looked back, because I've finally learned. You don't owe someone access to your life just because they gave you life. Leah is in therapy full-time now. She paints again. Big, messy canvases she used to hide when Mom visited. Noah published a collection of our stories under a pen name. It became a quiet bestseller in the grief and trauma section. We used the money to start a support group for adult survivors of family abuse. It's anonymous, small, but powerful, because nothing heals like knowing. You weren't crazy. You were controlled. You weren't dramatic. You were dismissed. You weren't broken. You were breaking free. We still get messages from her sometimes. Burner numbers, cryptic emails, fake accounts on Instagram. But we don't read them anymore. Not because we're afraid, but because we're not hers to reach. Her voice, once the loudest sound in every room, is now just a static echo behind a locked door we'll never open again. This summer, I married Noah. It was small. Not because we didn't have friends. We do. Real ones now. But because I wanted intimacy, not approval. No rice kneeling. No matching dresses. No curated family portraits for the fridge we never had. Just joy. And sunlight. And people who saw all of me and stayed. During the vows, I looked at my sister in the front row. She was smiling. Really smiling. Not because someone told her to, but because she chose to. And in that moment, I realized something. I didn't need an apology from my mother. I didn't need reconciliation, or justice, or even to be believed. I just needed a life that wasn't made in her image. So this is it. The last page. The final chapter. Not of the pain, but of letting it rule me. I don't forgive my mother. Not because I hate her, but because some things don't need forgiveness to be released. And today, I live free. Not because she let me go, but because I walked away and never looked back.